Hello, this is Philroy. I'm here with Murph, and I'm going to introduce him to Noble Edition. That's the long-running homebrew that I've been putting together. As we sit here and look at the table, you'll notice that there's some very different things. Some things are very different from your standard TI4 table, and I want to show you the grand mess that I'm in right now. Standard disclaimer: this is an early alpha state, relatively feature complete as far as this is a playable alpha at this point. Um, but it's not anywhere near remotely balanced or fine tuned or refined. There's a lot of extra stuff in here that I think needs to be removed before we get to a final release version. We got to figure out what's fun so that we can keep the fun parts and get rid of the boring, dumb parts. Is the way I would phrase it. Um, but anyway, we'll start here. Um, we'll start with the one of the big, most obvious changes over here. This area over here is Rec City. It's it's a an additional component that ties in three very core changes to the way the game works. On the right here, it says House of the People. This is your agenda voting tile area. It's if you're familiar with the old TTS voting area where you had your counters for counting up stuff. It's this kind of an idea. Counting up, counting down. You can click on the numbers here to count up and down to count votes on a thing. The idea here is these colored platforms then become voting targets. So, like you're voting for and against, you could just use two of these, because you drop an agenda here in the middle. Flip it over, boom, look at it, vote on it. Oh, look, Ixtian artifact is on top of the agenda deck. How'd that happen? I have no idea. But anyway, you could vote for or against just using any two of these. Whoever the speaker is could be whatever. Then, like, if you're voting for things that you need to elect, you can use these as voting targets. Like, hey, I'm gonna elect green. So then you can use to put your voting targets on the Greens target. If you're voting a system, you can go put a voting target out there in their system. If you've got to, elect an agenda, you can go drop your voting target over on the agenda and count the votes there. So, this is what I'm electing, is the idea. Again, this is crude proof of concept. See if it works. We'll see what happens with it. Feel free to chime in, Murph, if you get any questions along the way.
It's just there's a lot here that is because I haven't seen this in a very long time.
It's come a
So
long way since you saw it last.
there is a lot of stuff here that I don't understand. So I'm
This
just letting you go through the initial explanation because
second area, this palace complex, is for managing your role system. I wanted to expand the number of roles in the game. Originally, the original game just had the speaker. Now you have three major roles and six minor roles, and they do slightly different things. The three major roles have major impacts on game mechanics. The six minor roles play a role in objectives that come into the game, and they all have roles come in two parts. There's the role itself, which you'll notice if you look at one. Let me zoom in on this one and so you can see it zoomed in. It has a pass action. So every role now has an action that you do as your pass. Instead of just saying I pass and that's it, you do an action as your pass. I am passing and doing my role action. The Chancellor gets to move civilian ships around. The Administrator builds an advanced facility or a basic facility. Um, Treasurer gets to do stuff with trade goods, and each of these roles then has a different unique pass ability. This also likes I'm hoping that this will then impact the way people play their turns, help encourage people to pass early because you may be able wanting to do your pass action to impact somebody else instead of waiting to the end and just doing it at the end. So I want to create a dynamic tension there. The other second part of it is, and these are just cards that are just placeholder cards for playtesting purposes, is there is now a ministry action. Ministry action is what I like to call a tertiary effect of your strategy card. Let me go grab a strategy card. One we're long familiar with, leadership. Okay, everybody knows leadership, right? Primary, secondary ability, tertiary ability. The tertiary ability. You know what? Let me not do it with this one. Let me grab one of the ones that I updated.
It's about construction.
Yeah, construction has got a tertiary listing on it, so it's less confusing. I didn't swap all of them out. I didn't think to, but I think I will go ahead and swap them all out. The active player does the primary. Then everybody does a secondary action, and then you get to the tertiary. You could ignore what it says here. I didn't bother changing it because the tertiary is the same for everything now. The tertiary is perform your ministry action. So then your ministry action may be different than what your role is. Like here, you could have the construction, but you may have the ministry action for the commissariat. Where you're the commandant. You can exhaust.
So now it's these actions aren't tied to the card anymore. Like it's the role gives you the action, and then whenever you have a strategy card, you can do it.
Not quite. The role actually lets you play your ministry action separate from the strategy card, but if you don't have the matching role, you have to do it with it. But so then you would play this as your tertiary. But if you were the commandant, you could play the commissariat intimidation as a separate thing, as a power play somewhere else in your turn, instead of having to do and saves doing your strategy later.
Yep. Okay, I see what you're saying. It separates the actual trigger from the strategy card.
Right. But you vote on who, and you decide on collecting which role you want to have for the turn, and you also vote on and collect a ministry action if you want to have one. Odds are very good that you are going to take one because they are interesting, I think, across the board. But so that way, so now you've noticed you've got how many different things to vote on. You've got to vote on agenda cards. You've got to vote on picking up a role, except for the speaker. The speaker still transfers normally. That's one of your 3 power plays, and which are these 3 down here, which are separate. So you can vote on picking up a role, and the roles you keep from turn to turn unless somebody takes it from you and claims it from you. But then the ministry
are voted on.
And I'm using the term vote, but really it's a diplomatic action, and I'm coming to that in a second. But you'll have 3 things that you need to spend diplomats on. You got to use your diplomats to vote on agendas. You got to use diplomats to claim roles and to claim ministry actions. And then the 4th thing that you'll be using it for is if we come over here to the Senate complex with your nice little rosette, these are where you're voting on choosing what objectives come into the game. Your 6 minor roles, you'll notice that each of them are kind of aligned with a color. Eventually I'll recolor the role cards to match. But they each have a color, and they each have a rosette, and they each then match with one of these 6 objective types over here. So every round, whoever has that role, whoever is the treasurer, gets to choose and submit a diplomat, a spend role related objective. Whoever's the inquisitor will get to, offer what's going to be, a potential explore objective. Whoever's the commissar gets to do the exterminate objective, so on and so forth. This will change slightly. I'm looking at rearranging who's associated with what potentially, but then we're going to vote on which one of these objectives, whichever one has the most support, joins the objective track.
Now I did see something else with that, if I may.
Yep.
You pulled these cards, and this one on top was 2. This one on top was 1. So are the points now randomized?
They are not restricted. You can have two victory point conditions come out before 1 point victory conditions. It's all about what everybody at the table wants to add to the play. So you could have all 2 pointers, and have a very quick game. You could have all 1-pointers and stretch it out a little bit. It still ends in the same number of rounds, but it's what you think the table will support and what you think the table will be interested in, and you're trying to pick out objectives and vote for objectives A, that you can accomplish, and B, that you think other people at the table will be interested in doing too. You don't want to waste your votes on something that's, that isn't going to get elected, and then everybody elects something different that may or may not be good for you.
Okay. Now I also may be getting ahead of myself here, but you said these 6, but I can't help but notice these 2 over here.
These are special. The Excel objectives are going to give you your 2 starter objectives. And if they will be, and I've got to rewrite them here, but they are semi-cooperative objectives that not everyone can score. They are objectives that in the beginning people will have to work together to be able to score, but they are not long-term, not things that everybody at the table can score.
Okay.
And there will be
Excel.
And there will always be an Excel thrown out in the middle of the table as a potential objective for people to vote on as well. There's always an Excel to go for. It's kind of like your fallback. If nobody likes anything else, like you can always do the Excel.
It's a de facto.
Exalt is very closely tied to Imperial, and we'll get to that interesting little mechanic. It's basically a replacement for your Imperial points. With
the Imperial, like the score Imperial point.
Score an Imperial point. Yep. In fact, since you're mentioning it right now, we'll look at it now. Let me bring it over here. All right. Immediately score 1 public objective if you fulfill its requirements. Gain 1 victory point if you control Mechatol Rex. Otherwise, draw 1 secret objective. The tertiary here is going to move up to become a part of that. If you control Mechatol Rex, otherwise draw 1 secret objective. If you control Mechatol Rex, you must claim the Regent's token. So, if you claim that 1 free victory point, that is your victory point for being crowned Regent, then you are no longer eligible to score, is the way it's supposed to end up working out. I got to change the text here. But you, if you are not the Regent, gain 1 victory point if you control Mechatol Rex and be crowned Regent. Otherwise, draw 1 secret objective.
Okay, so it stops people from just keep taking Imperial and
going
a point after a point after a point after a point.
Now, if you're the Regent, you get this deck. And this deck lets you pick and you get to pick. You don't have to draw randomly. You get to flip through it and pick one of these out. These are contests that you can put out there. They are single solitary victory points that you can announce as contests, as challenges for players to go for. Obviously, you're going to lean into victory points that you feel that you have a good chance of being able to get, or will allow you to get victory points, or you know what I mean? That you have the power of privilege.
And I understand. So, and all these objectives have been added, but there still is the limitation of the 10 objectives per game.
Right. After this is all done, if you go to reveal another one, Imperium Rex.
Which means objective variance is going to be incredibly high.
Potentially. Potentially. And so you're going to have a lot more variance in objectives. You're going to have a lot more variance in the point values for objectives and how fast they come out. Yeah.
We have a bloodthirsty game. It's going to be a lot of exterminates.
And with playtesting, we may discover that like 12 or 14 points really needs to be the standard. Now I've got the 10-point track out, but 14 points may become standard for this. But again, considering that you can throw 2-pointers out there early and score them early, it may not actually make a huge difference. Game time will become a lot more variable. But now you guys, a lot of this is going on in the strategy phase. You're not necessarily voting on all of this in the strategy phase, but you are setting it up. Strategy
Oh,
phase
so
goes
there's now a lot more strategy in the strategy phase.
not necessarily. Strategy phase has 4 steps. You are going to reveal an event. Okay, boom. This is something that is going to happen. Dimensional shift. At the end of the agenda phase, or what would be the agenda phase, the event hits. Place this card, starting with the speaker and proceeding clockwise. Each player chooses one system that contains their ship. Swap that system with a randomly selected adjacent non-home, non-Mechatol system. So basically, at the end of this round, the map is going to get mixed up.
That is huge. Like, that's
It,
not a small event.
that is not a small event. Some of the events are small, and some of them are game breaking. And again, playtesting will decide whether or not people want. And we may just decide, mark some of them as nasty or game breaking, and others are a little more tame, so that people can choose the mix for game breaking and whatever they want. But the idea here, though, is you get to see what's coming for the entire round and prepare for it.
Okay, so we have a disaster forecast
Right.
essentially.
And I'm considering adding a collective ability to mitigate these events. Especially some of the nasty ones where it'd be like, for this one, if the table is willing to contribute X number of trade goods, you can prevent it from happening.
That I would not. That I think is a very good idea.
So that then they turn into that. Again, that's here nor there, but like I said, this is the playable. It's an alpha. This is where it's at right now. But I'll share what my thoughts are for how things might shift in the future too as we go. You'll have an event. It gets revealed. Then you're going to assign your planetary support. If you go over to your play area, we'll go look at green because that's where you were sitting. You will notice up here in the front you have 3 meeples. These represent your diplomatic corps. These guys will live over in Rex City. You will notice that you have a series of tokens that represent the planets that you control. You assign planetary support to diplomats, which essentially defines their strength value. A diplomat has 1 by itself. Your big super grande special ambassador meeple gets a value of 5. And then then you can upgrade your diplomatic corps, and then there's a third type that can show up. That's 3.
Okay. So
Then
you
you
actually have to sort of build and organize your diplomatic side.
think about it ahead of time. And once everybody's assigned their planetary strengths to their ambassadors and to their diplomatic corps, and you'll select your strategy cards like normal. Then you have to assign diplomats. So that's where everybody's going to come over and in order, go around the table, round robin, everybody placing their stuff. You're going to claim things. Okay, hey, I'm going to leave this guy over here to vote for stuff over here, and I'm going to put this guy over here because I'm worried about these agendas, and I'm just going to send my Grande Meeple over here to claim the commissar role for me.
Okay.
If somebody shows up with something that is stronger than you are, they can boot you out of that space and claim it for themselves later.
Oh.
So, so you got to put a little thought into where you put your values for your meeples and where you're putting stuff, because people might skunk you out of something.
Okay, and if you may quickly go over this here, so you have to assign it to the planet, right? And then assign it to like
It's just
one
sitting
of
over here
these.
waiting to be used for voting over here. Now, I may have decided, you know what? I don't want to do that. I'm going to put this guy over here, and I'm just going to set him off to the side here to use to vote on objectives when the objectives voting come up.
And so when you do go to vote, does it just use the influence value
Yeah,
of
it uses
the
whatever
planet?
the entire strength.
Okay.
Like here, I'm dropping two support on this. I'm dropping my 4 votes for X the artifact on 4 against over here.
Okay.
But I'm just deciding how I want to divide up my stuff initially, before I'm just deciding where my meeples are gonna go, and then I'm deciding boom, 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 and where I want to put stuff to claim stuff. Um, and then you assign diplomats, and then you go to an action phase, strategy, and then you come to the status phase, and then in the status phase you'll go through a series of phases. Um, you'll do a palace phase, which is, or not palace, the Senate phase over here, where you're going to vote for your objective using the meeples that you've assigned over there to select between the choices that people have put out there. People will promote the because the objectives they'll be drawn for their hand. They'll throw them out which one they want to propose as a docket item, and then you'll vote on it. And then you'll whichever one makes it, or in case of a tie, it goes to to the the default one. Um, that over there is reveal your objective, and then boom, keep going. And you'll go into a ministry upkeep phase, where you're going to do an imperial economy. I've added a trade good economy upgrade. I think you might have been around for that. You'll notice the big bag over here on the other side of the table.
Yes, the Imperial Treasury.
Yeah, that's the Imperial Treasury, and it's going to get loaded up with trade goods. Selection of normal Imperial trade goods to start with, so that it's not starting empty. I can get them to drop in because I'm being a dork. There we go. 5 in there right now. There you go. Make it 6. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I may not have it completely worked out yet. There we go. There we go.
There
6. If you have any trade stations around on the map, they get a trade good drawn from randomly, dropped on the map. Those then become cargoes of value that you can haul around the map using either a ship with capacity or a ship with a cargo value. Capacity involves cargo holds that you can also use to carry military units, whereas a cargo value can be used strictly for trade goods, non-military stuff. You'll pay mercs and advisors. We'll get to them in a minute. You gain your command tokens, gain your action cards, return your strategy cards, and your ministry actions that you used. And then you go into an agenda phase. You'll do 2 agendas, and then you'll resolve the event. You go on to the next round. Some of
Now,
these,
has agenda phase changed outside of this here?
no. I just have a different way of
Doing
tracking
the
it.
votes.
See, yeah, just counting the votes on these things, and
And you obviously need your diplomats on
right.
your
And
planets.
these represent your votes. They say, hey, what am I going to vote for? I'm going to throw. And you cannot move the planetary tokens. So you'll have 1 or 2 or 3 numerical values that you have to vote as solid blocks.
Oh.
So, like, this diplomat has 4, but I've only got 1 diplomat. We'll say I had all 3 of them over here, and I just threw everything into the agenda phase for some weird reason. Okay. Yeah. He's got a whole bunch of things over here. I can put multiple blocks on there, but they're voting as blocks. So that would be 4, 5, 6 votes. No.
Okay,
Boom.
so the diplomats add 1.
Diplomats add 1. They just
Okay.
um
And okay, so you can't. So this means you wouldn't be able to vote with planets that aren't on that don't have a diplomat,
right. So if
right?
you use like if you use this planet was under here for this guy, he's off doing something else. So that planet is ineligible to vote with. Basically, you're voting with these token stacks now instead of having to flip and exhaust your cards in the agenda
Alrighty.
phase. As a side token to that, it does mean that if somebody changes and steals a planet from you, they also were going to get the power token from you, and your diplomat's strength values may change during the round.
Yes, because this is assigned at the strategy phase, and
Right.
it goes on. Okay. Interesting. So the actually you have to defend your diplomatic positions. Interesting.
Right, and somebody may be taking a planet purely to undercut your voting strength in another round at the end of
New
the round.
incentives to it. New incentives to attack other people are always good.
Yeah. So
Now, if I may, just looking at all this now, we have a fair, understanding of what's happening in strategy and status, but we haven't really talked much about the real meat, the real action phase, the action phase.
yeah.
So what's changed in the action phase?
Well, it's a lot of it changes with the different roles and the things that they focus on. Um, the commissar is very much focused on leaders. You know, uh, so the commissar, the ministry action, he gets to exhaust a leader. You place this card over it. Basically, you treat it as though that leader did not exist. So you can turn somebody's agent off, or turn somebody's hero off, or turn somebody's commander off for the remainder of the turn. Um,
Oh,
yeah, not nice, huh? You also then get to draw two commissars from the deck and pick one to keep. Not, potentially, you may pick one to keep. So these are commissars. These are single shot commanders that you add as to your leader pile that all have abilities that you have to pay upkeep if you want to keep them from round to round. Otherwise, you get them as a single shot. So you get Qs all once, but if you want to keep him for more than one round, you're going to have to pay an action card to keep him.
or
Uh,
in this case, an influence to keep him.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So then these then
So
become
there's
they
sort of
have
a like the between an agent and a leader.
yeah, an agent, a commander. You can pay to
Yeah.
refresh them, but it might take you a little bit to do it. Um, the chancellor, where is it? Diploma, yeah, chancellor. He's all about law and diplomatics and courts and stuff. He lets you move civilian ships around. Civilian ships are a new unit type they are non-combat ships. They do not participate in combat unless the active player chooses to include civilian ships in the fight, which then gets into piracy. If you start blowing up civilian ships, you get marked as a pirate, and the Imperial ships will go after you in fights. Then, if there are Imperial ships around when you're involved in a combat,
Okay.
um, the Holy Court's intrigue, the Ministry action, you get to exhaust an objective. Objectives are that's also something that's supposed to be done during the strategy phase. Is people will put out what the objectives are that they think are going to be out. Gives people a chance to kind of see them, think about them, prepare for them a little bit. They know what might be coming. They might take actions to try and prepare for what they think will get voted in, so that they have a better shot at getting it. See if it works out or not.
And
Um,
you mentioned civilian ships.
yep.
You want to go a little bit more in depth on how those work?
Yeah, they're over here on your play area. We'll go back over here to the green play area. You'll notice you've got 4 civilian ship types: a freighter, a great ship, a trade convoy, and a consular yacht. Those are these guys up here. You have a great ship, which is sort of a hybrid civilian military vessel. It's like your personal ship, but your personal yacht, not your personal flagship necessarily.
And you build these just the same as any other
Yeah,
ship,
they
just
do not
during
have
production.
upgrades. Yeah, they don't have upgrades. But your great ship is unique in that it has capacity as opposed to cargo. The freighter is actually supposed to be 6 cargo, but it says capacity on it. This one's actually says capacity, and it's going to stay capacity. So it's a civilian ship that you could use to sneak military units around with. Just don't get caught. It does weird things with the rules, and it's intended to be intentional. because it's pretty much guaranteed if you're doing that, you're gonna end up getting called a pirate and picked on and all kinds of bad stuff.
Now, I also see different abilities here listed like diplomatic immunity and speech.
Yep. When it comes time for casting votes in Mechatol Rex, if these ships are in orbit around Mechatol Rex, you can make what essentially amounts to an anti-fighter barrage roll for additional votes.
Okay. So, let's say the great ship's on Megatal Rex, and it comes to,
Yeah,
comes to a game
and
of
it
phase.
says gain one voting die. Anywhere you see the words voting die, that's you gain an additional diplomat meeple. So
Okay. So this is one meeple, and then I also would roll 3 dice, and if they hit on 6 or higher, I get 1 extra vote for each one?
yeah,
Is that how that works?
this is a little clunky because I hadn't fully reworked this since I came up with the Mechatol Rex, but that's the direction it's going. And it probably will be a bonus to a single vote cast, not to all your meeples, but just like, hey, your guy's going to cast this vote. Go ahead and roll your speech dice for some extra hits as you place your meeple.
And when do Imperial frigates come into like, you mentioned that, if you're labeled a pirate, frigates will attack you and all that, but how they actually come into play?
They are around the map, and they are the bailiwick of the admiral. The admiral is in charge of the Imperial frigates, and that's one of the roles. Imperial frigates are civilian defenders. They are civilian ships. They do not get involved in combat unless civilian ships are involved in the combat. In which case, if Imperial frigates are present, they join the side of the defender to defend the civilian ships.
So that means you could, let's say, have your great ship. You could move your great ship into a system with an Imperial frigate, attack someone else with the great ship if you choose to include civilian ships, and the frigate would join you
The frigate would join the side of the defender. So
or the
since you are
defense.
moving your great ship in, and you are the attacker and you are the attacker player, frigates will try to keep the peace and join the defender because you're attacking
Okay,
civilians. If your
okay,
great ship is in a system and gets attacked, and there are Imperial frigates there, it will join the fight to try and defend your great ships. Your great
what's
ship.
this?
This was a
What's this
placeholder
diplomat
card.
card?
This will eventually this is your diplomatic core, because your diplomatic core there's an additional setting which is where you get your 3 meeples to start with. But if you send a consular yacht, remove your consular yacht from Mechatol Rex, basically purge it, you get to upgrade your diplomat, and you gain these additional 2 meeples to join your diplomatic core. So you can
Okay,
upgrade your
so
core, which gives you more options and more flexibility in voting going for stuff.
alrighty. So I'm just looking at
Yeah.
things in this area that I don't recognize, and the thing that immediately catches my eye outside of this is a purple technology.
Yep. There is a row of purple tech that is all related to um
Oop,
yeah.
sorry.
Yep. You got it. You get the idea. It is all related to these new game mechanics. Some of them are just new. You know, colonial propaganda. If you don't really not doing the civilian things, you can blow up one of your own civilian ships to ignore a purple prerequisite,
Oh,
upgrade more stuff.
okay.
So that's your purple skip.
Uh, so this is-
The Imperial
Okay,
War, you can
so
borrow
that
an Imperial frigate and treat it as one of your own during this tactical action.
so we might as well call this imperial technology then, because it mainly
A
revolves
lot of
around
it's a lot of
some of the imperial
Imperial
more
and
neutral elements.
civilian stuff.
Okay. Strategic field array Oh, that's a monument. Okay.
Yeah, that is a monument. That is a faction specific
Structure.
structure that you can build that has a unique ability. Basically, turns one planet of your choice into a legendary planet with a specific faction specific legendary. Um,
And these facilities?
these are facilities. The basic facilities you can build as an option with your construction ability. There are three basic facilities: 2 refineries, 2 colonies, 2 trade stations. Colonies increase the influence value of a planet by 1. Refineries increase the resource value of a planet by 1. And trade stations, um, when you place it, you immediately draw 2 trade goods from the treasury and place them on the planet. You can
Okay.
then, you know, if you get basically if you can haul trade goods back to one of your space docks, you claim them from the board and they join your bank pile down here on your command sheet.
And
But
you have
trade
the
stations then will also then in the status phase continue to generate trade goods.
okay. So it's sort of like a passive income
A
sort
passive
of thing.
income that is on the board that somebody could steal from you if you let it get too big, and somebody might get greedy.
And then you
Um,
have the advanced structures you were
you have
mentioning.
the advanced structures. Those are one-shot, single-shot abilities that you have to build through um, uh, construction. The administrator ministry card.
And I'm assuming these symbols here are basically it has to be on a planet that meets this.
Right. You can only build them on planets that have that trait.
Yeah. So this
Or
can be
factory could
built.
pretty
This
much
one
go
can't be built.
anywhere.
This can't be built on Mechatol
Right.
or Legendary.
Right. This one could be built on Mechatol, not anyplace else. This one has to go on a planet with a tech skip. So
Okay.
this one cannot go on a hazardous planet. And those symbols may change. This is from somebody else's facilities mod, and I'm using it as placeholder while we adjust it with permission to kind of fit in more natively with what we're doing here. Uh,
And speaking of, because you mentioned the trade goods with the trade hub, I do know that from last time I looked at this, though I don't know if how it's changed at all. You had player-specific commodities.
yep, right here. These are very simple.
Let's-
Whenever you're told to gain commodities, you gain commodities. You gain the trade good coins from your bag that are your color. If a trade good is your color, you consider it to be a commodity and it goes into your commodities pile. You hand that to somebody else, it immediately becomes a trade beat because for them, it's not their color. Conversely, if
Okay.
somebody hands you your own color back, it's a commodity for you, not a trade good, and it goes into your commodity pile.
But
Uh,
that makes sense. If
and
a faction's really good at producing lead pipes, and they give it to someone else, and they just get those lead pipes right back, they're going to be worthless.
yeah, now say when you
So
spend money, it goes into the Imperial Treasury here. Now, you may draw from it. You may draw your own things back, and if you draw your own things back, guess what? You got commodities back, not just trade goods. For trade, you draw 3 from the bag here. You may get 3 Imperials, or you may get 3 commodities, depending on how much money you've been pumping into the economy. So,
interesting. Interesting.
like Barony now has an inherent. Their trade goods aren't exactly worth the same as Hakon's because uh, they have an inherent scarcity to them, which will change the way that their trade goods interact with the economy versus the Hakan, who are dumping trade goods out there like crazy. And if they don't mitigate it or manage it, they will find themselves starved because they have choked the market with their trade goods. And there is a mechanism over here with the economics to if you are the treasurer, you can return all your commodities from the treasury to your supply. Basically, you wipe all your treasuries out of the imperial treasury, um, so that you don't have to ever worry about drawing your own stuff back.
Right?
And
And lastly,
then the ministry action lets you basically do a trade. You can trade your commodities or trade goods withdrawals from the Imperial Treasury. So you can try and just, I'm going to trade for some random. I got 5 here. I'm going to throw them at the Treasury and see if I can get some randoms from it that are actually worth something to me.
okay, okay. And lastly, here I see these two objectives. Are these faction-specific objectives?
Those are faction specific, and they are basically cheater ways to get your faction specific technologies out an alternate way. If you don't want to spend your trade or research for them specifically, you could get them if you can do the task on it without, you know.
So for as the core goes, the lot of the core elements have not been changed. Like researching still operates the same, production still operates the same.
All of that still operates the same.
Tokens. So we're more just adding new layers on top
We're
of
adding some
those
new layers
functions.
on tap. We're giving you some additional abilities to play with. We're giving you some additional ways to modify your slice. Yeah, that's the forbidden token. That's for the Inquisitor. The Inquisitor is the role in charge of research and technology. Research
Oh, that's right.
strategy card. He has an ability whereby he can forbid a technology, and it's forbidden, and nobody can at the table can use it. You get a token so that you
It's
can put
one,
your yeah,
correctly, it has to be a non-unit, non-faction tech
non faction tech, but they could be like,
that you don't
hey,
own.
you know what? We're gonna outlaw gravity drive. Nobody can use gravity drive until something else gets declared, taboo and forbidden.
Now, to go back on this, you also mentioned to go back on the facilities, because I was just looking over here. I noticed there's a Imperial facility. So how do those work?
The Imperial facility again are right now. This may change. Located through exploration. If we
Okay.
draw an exploration card, hey, look, it's got mixed up. There we go. It's on the bottom of the pile. Imperial facility. Place an Imperial facility of your choice on this planet if at least one is available that matches this planet type. So you could say, okay, I explored an industrial planet. You can come over here to the Imperial, and I'll just shuffle them out over here. You can come over here and you can look through for one that says, oh, I could build a shipyards on it, or I could build an architectural reserve, or I could build the Imperial Mint, or I could build. Oh, it looks like that's it. I could build one of those 3 on that planet.
Okay.
And it's not really built on the planet, it's built in orbit around the planet because these are mega structures.
Okay.
Um, which is what there's a thing, and they are like, oh, here's the Imperial Mint, so we'll just use that one. Now you'll get this card. The Imperial Mint token goes out on the board in that area, and I got to work on the size here. It's obviously too big.
A little large.
But again, this is for playtesting. Let me turn the grid off so that it doesn't snap into weird places. But then this goes into that space, and now it's there, and it's a planet in that it can hold 4 ground forces. You can land forces on it to take control of it. It'll also hold 1 structure, so you could put a PDS on it. You could put a space dock on it, whatever. But it has to go in a system that matches the right traits. And then these Imperial megastructures have a unique ability of their own. Let me go back to where the card is over here. The Imperial Mint. Okay. Whenever you would place commodities into the treasury, return them to your reinforcements instead. So you don't even have to take the treasurer roll token um,
Oh.
to avoid that stuff. Like this just like when you spend money, if it's yours, it just goes back to your um,
So it doesn't go into the treasury.
yeah.
It goes into your personal supply.
Yeah.
which gets rid of yours in the global economy or the galactic economy, I guess, in this
Right,
in this
because your
sense.
your commodities are essentially imperial money because you're replacing your money with imperial trade goods, and that may change. I may just literally say like, hey, grab the imperial token bag and start using it instead. Again, something
Mhm.
for playtesting to decide. I have ideas to zig and zag just about everything in here to expand or extract or change or alter, but I didn't want to just sit around and making changes forever. I wanted to get it done. Proof is in the playtest. Let's see what actually needs changing before I go start changing things like crazy.
I will say, this actual Imperial Facility card raises a question. Place 4 trade goods from the treasury on this planet. Because and I know you mentioned,
So like
um,
here, if
you
if
can
there were
transport trade goods
right, and it's
with
they go essentially they're in the space area around the planet. They're in orbit around the planet. You can grab it from the planet. You've got something with
uh,
capacity there that you could pick up trade goods with. You can, in that system, you can pick up the same way you would pick up ground forces, transport them.
so if I ask, what is the purpose of transporting those goods?
Um,
Because I don't think you touched on this yet. Can you no longer just give trade goods to a neighbor? Do you have to do it through
oh no,
transport
you
ships?
can still do that. It's just trade goods that are on the board. Let me grab a handful of some.
Is this where
Like
piracy gets involved?
yeah, like there's these 4 trade goods sitting there in the system over here. Okay, and the white player manages to throw a freighter in there. Um, you know, he can pick up those 4 trade goods. You know, boom. And now he's transporting them, and then he can haul that whole stack of them. And if he can get them back to a system where he has a space dock, then he claims
They're
those four
yours.
trade goods. Yeah,
Until then, you can get raided or
yeah. And if like you're hauling the stuff along and somebody blows you up, they could then those trade goods are then loose in the system, and somebody else could grab them with a ship with capacity or cargo and haul them their direction.
interestingly enough, actually,
So
that
it's
gives Mentex's ability more credence.
yeah, and but it's the idea here is that you've got something to fight over, and we've played enough TI4 by now to know that sometimes an extra 1, 2, 3, or 4 trade goods can make a world of difference in how your game goes.
Oh yeah.
So that's the idea here. These
Well, I
values may
feel
change,
I feel a lot more educated in this. If there
and hopefully it's a
is there
lot
any
less
more?
scary. I mean, let's say we can go through all the different roles, but it's facilities we talked about, events we talked about, leaders we talked about. We talked about the
Council.
objectives. These are all thematic decks. If everybody wants to vote for exterminate day objectives in all day long, then we're going to have a lot of bloody fights. If everybody wants to do a lot of exchange, then we're going to turn into a massive. Hey, let's do a bunch of trading and get resources to spend on trade goods because it's a lot of spend objectives. Exploration we'll be doing and fighting over technology and stuff like that. Um, exploit is a whole bunch of weird situational stuff. Market day, have a trade convoy, a system with at least 2 other trade convoys. Demilitarize a planet, remove 4 infantry from a planet, and earn a victory point. Weird stuff. And, conquer the weak. That's the old vicious one from the old game. Um, have one or more ships in the same system as basically that's blockade. Two different space docks at the same time.
And this one is just will intimidate council.
Yeah, that's the old
That one.
strand by galvanize the people. Sponsor 3
Yep.
docket items at the same time. That's a weird one. Basically,
Docket
that's
items?
those are your objectives out here in the middle because you got to
Oh,
remember
okay,
you
okay.
can hold rolls. Well, some roles you can hold multiple roles at the same time.
So
Now
you can so
you
if
can only have one of the three majors at a time. Okay, you could either be the prime minister, the regent, or the speaker. You can only be one of those at the time. And if you're something
so
else and you claim speaker, then the other roles are yeah,
so
things
let's
happen.
say
But you
we're
could have
playing a five.
multiple. You could be the commandant, treasurer, chancellor.
So let's say we're playing a 5-player game, and I take trade, and I take the role for whatever trade is. Which one was
Treasurer,
that? Treasurer.
treasurer,
So I take treasurer, and
right?
then next round, no one picks trade, and I pick another one, and
Yeah,
I get 2
you
rolls
could
then.
you have two roles, and when it comes time to pass, you'll have a choice of which pass action you want to take.
Okay, so I don't get both. You only get one
You get one
in
of them,
terms of
right?
pass action.
Right. You could do a normal pass and not do either one if you wanted to, but you would have, or you could choose to pass and do one of these two pass actions.
Okay.
But then if you could manage to pick up, but you got to remember then you pick up a third one. Okay, now you've got three different pass actions to choose from, but at the same time you're sponsoring which of these. You're deciding what the treasury is gonna submit, what the the high command is gonna submit, and you're gonna what the academy is gonna commit.
Slowly becomes a dictatorship rather than a democracy.
Yeah, you've decided what three of the possibilities are that people are going to vote on. Three of the seven possibilities are. And at the same time, once you have three of them out there, you get to throw, hey, by the way, uh, you know, um, now you score the public there for, three target items at the same time. These are when you put these out here, you'll throw a command token on them, or not a command token, an ownership token to show that you sponsored it. And when the next player comes in the next round, these are not necessarily discarded. The next player could
Oh.
decide, you know what, I like rule distant lands. I'm gonna leave it out there and not replace it.
Oh, okay. So you can also just get it just if you're the first one to sponsor it, and then just over time, it doesn't
Nobody
get
kicks
voted
it
on, but
out.
people keep it in the docket.
Leave it on the docket, and they don't boot it out. So now people will know that that's out there, but hey, and then I got like an absolutely massive secret deck that is a mixture of cards from all of the six different types. So you could draw a secret. You could have something that's an economic secret, an exploration, a combat. Here's privateering.
Oh,
Destroy a ship
so
carrying cargo. It could be a secret objective. You got to find somebody to pick up some cargo and go blow their ship up.
alrighty.
Threaten enemies. Control discourse. These may be where it's related to finding or controlling specific imperial facilities, which may or may not show up. So in that regard, they may be bum secrets, or they may be amazing secrets because you may just find it and it's sitting in your area
In typical secret fashion.
in typical secret fashion.
So do you want to just to like sort of wrap up here? Do you want to just go over each of the 9 roles, and just talk about them?
Sure. Why don't we do it this way? Um,
Want to line these up?
yeah, we can. I'll just pull them over here and we'll just kind of line them up. Sure. These are the 6 core ones. It's the Inquisitor that says Commissar, but that's going to change to Commandant because Commissar is going to be the name that I use for these advisor cards that you get. You can hire a Commissar to work with as a leader amongst your people.
Alrighty.
The
So let's
Inquisitor
go.
is
Let's go left to right here.
yep. Treasurer pass, return commodities from the treasury to your supply, so you don't have to worry about drawing them out of the Imperial Treasury when you do draws. Guard, when you pass, you can produce Imperial frigates and put them out on the board. Because those frigates protect civilian travel lanes, commercial shipping lanes and stuff. So then you could try and set stuff up so that you can move your freighters around safely. The commandant gets to. This is kind of mean. When you pass, you could make somebody move half their remaining tactics tokens to their strategy pool. Like, you're not. Are you done this turn? I'm pretty sure you're done taking actions this turn, right? Kind of a I'm done and you're done too. It's only half. And you don't actually lose the strategy tokens. You just
They
lose
just
the
go to
ability to
strategy.
do tactical actions with them that turn. Upkeep, you could move them around again and use them in the future. But yeah, Inquisitor forbid the researching and use of one non-faction, non-unit upgrade. So this is where you get to put it under a forbidden token and say no. We're going to pretend that one doesn't exist. And that continues. So if you're the Inquisitor and you do this multiple rounds, you can forbid multiple techs, and they remain forbidden until somebody takes the Inquisitor away from you.
No assault cannon.
No assault cannon, no gravity drive, no duranium armor,
No graviton laser system.
Right.
Looking at you, Ziksha.
The Chancellor gets to move civilian ships as they have fleet supply into adjacent systems. They just get to do a final little shove, which can be nice as enough to like get stuff where you want it to go to get your trade goods or whatever. Administrator gets to build an advanced or basic facility and whenever they pass. So if you get the administrator, your slice could just increase in value over the couple of rounds.
And then the big rolls.
And then the big rolls. Speaker is pretty much the same. No real changes there, other than I added a pass action where when you pass, you can reverse the agenda voting order.
Oh.
Clockwise or counterclockwise.
And just basically you just turn it around depending on the arrow.
Yeah, which way you want it to go. Just to keep track. The regent, when he passes, he has the power of privilege. He gets to use a combination of either 2 unclaimed strategy card secondaries or ministry actions. He gets to look at the strategy cards that are still out that were not taken and any ministry actions that are sitting there and just do 2 of them.
Alrighty. And the Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister, when he passes, he has direct control over the agenda dockets. He gets to pick one thing that he doesn't like and get rid of it and replace it with something else that he likes. This could be another way to help you score that other secret.
I know. I just said we would wrap up, but I just noticed something. It is actually about voting, I think, but I don't know if this is just a flavor thing, but I'm just noticing that these for the diplomats, like you have robber, builder.
Oh, yeah, that's because I stole them from one of the other big Meeple games. I used them because I wanted to give each color a distinctely shaped super. This is their super ambassador, so it's a distinctively shaped theme thing for them. Yeah.
Okay.
So the mouse over on it.
It's not important. It's not important.
It's not important, but it is funny to see that they are different shapes, and it's a bunch of weird alien looking shapes for their head ambassadors. You can see them all lined up here, and it's kind of fun to see. And
if I may, go ahead.
Go ahead. What you got in your mind?
I was just wondering, if I just may ask who. So basically, I know you've been sort of the head of this.
I've been the chief integrator, but I haven't. A lot of these pieces come from other expansions that other people have made, and they have given me permission to integrate.
Yeah. I was just wondering if you want to quickly just throw their names out, so sort of like a.
I'd have to dig. I haven't assembled the final thank you lists yet. But Dave Bott, Kakatopos, Wecker, Irish Cyborg, and this is where I hate to name names off the top of my head because I know I'm going to forget people, and I don't want the people to feel bad about being forgotten. But a whole host of names that I got to dig back and figure out who helped me with what, and Daryl's done a few adjustments to the main mod to help prepare supporting this. Because I mean, look at this. If this Breck City covers
There's a
practically
lot
as
to
much
script.
space as the map, there's other little pieces here, little twists and twerks that I have lined out as potential mechanics. Like potentially your this guy, who's your upgraded, not your normal size meeple. He's kind of that middle guy. Um, One of these meeples, either your main or your meeple, could be used as a minus vote as opposed to a positive vote. So he
Oh,
basically says, "I will vote for anything but this option," and so his vote turns into a negative against it, which for a simple for and against vote isn't that important, but for a when there are two or three things being elected, that could be huge.
when the votes are really distributed.
Yeah.
Now, I guess my last question is when we get in the physical print.
A year after I finish getting this thing worked up, because a lot of the graphics here are rough. A lot of this is hodgepodge together. Like I've imported these factions, but I haven't trimmed them down, so they've got extra bleed stuff on them, so they're not actually scaled right. A lot of believe it or not, this Rex City is all just placeholder art that I slapped together real fast. For example, this nice looking dome thing here. Yeah, that's an aerial view of some fancy bar in China that was made. That's like a lotus bar or something. I just stole an aerial view from and clipped it out and
Did some hue shifts.
did some huge shifts on it to give some different shapes and dumped it on there. You know, this is an aerial view of some city in the United States. I forget which one it is.
Really abusing the hue saturation feature in GIMP. Uh,
Yeah, and then it was overlaid some uh,
is that
shot
Mars?
from NASA of some planet. I can't
That's
remember if it was
Moon.
Mars
That's
or
Moon.
Moon or whatever, but just something that
But
quick gives me a quick sketch in of what I'm intending, because like I could do this with just a big box of squares, but it's hard to tell what's going on. This way, you start to feel like, hey, there's three different things going on, and this is the purpose of this area. This is the purpose of this area. And you kind of gives you a natural, like, hey, this is how it should be arranged. You know what I mean? And gives you a clue as to how to use that area.
it is funny though because I was just being lighthearted, jokey, but it is cool that you actually kind of have somewhat of an idea for like a physical print down the line, which is really
Yeah.
interesting.
Um,
Alrighties.
that's this is nobility, and somebody joked on one of the discords earlier that I managed to make an expansion that TI players stare at the same way that normal game players stare at TI. Like, it's that overwhelming mess. Wait, what? You
That
expect me to do
whoa.
what? But I really don't think that in the long run it ends up being as confusing as you first think it will be.
No, and a lot of it is mostly based around the roles, which I think is the whole point, hence nobility.
Yep.
Um, oh, and a lot of it's based around that, and just sort of have like these little cool other features, sort of like the
Thematic.
Imperial Treasury, which I think is a really cool idea, and facilities and mega structures that just sort of like
Give
give a
more
few
depth.
extra.
Yeah.
Yeah,
A little more depth and texture to this map, because by the time you throw some facilities out there, I actually I mean, for simplicity right now, I went with just these little tokens that you could drop on planets to mark them for what they are. But I was at one point looking at little miniatures that you could drop out, and I just decided, you know what,
I
that's going
saw
to get
that. Yeah.
really confusing, and let me just simplify it, decide what's fun. Because it may be that, like, having advanced and basic facilities may become too much, you know, and I just end up having to just go with like just the basic facilities or something, and working more of that. The Imperial megastructures may be bust. We'll see what happens there.
I actually
Um,
think the mega structures are based off of my old mega structures a while
I think
back.
that's I think that's where I did kind of base them off there, but it's a combination of these.
and
And
moons,
moons
right?
and the cards for them um over here. Those came from Kakatopos. I asked him to put these together
They're
so that I
really
could
beautiful cards.
to put them together and to give me some imperial facilities. Now so that these are specials. The Ubulayet, that's one I'm particularly proud of. Um, when an action card is played, exhaust this card and give any card under this card to the player playing a card. The card they're playing is canceled and placed under this card. So basically, it's action card jail that only can hold one card at a time. But the
Funny.
downside is once you've imprisoned a card under it, if you imprison a different card, somebody takes it over and imprisons a different card. Whatever was under there goes to whoever was playing the card.
Oh,
So, like, you cancel a Sabo and it goes under here. Well, if there was a Sabo under here, you're handing him a Sabo back. We're just going to forget
well,
about this card for a while. Good stuff.
we are.
So that's where it's
But
at right now.
I'm I can't wait to test it, and I can't wait to contribute more to it.
And
Uh,
I don't think it's as scary a proposition to play it as some people think it is, but we'll see.
I know because I actually have talked about this to some of my friends, the nobility expansion. Um, and I just remember a few of them were just like, "Yeah, no, I barely can play regular Twilight. I'm not
Yeah.
go and play Super Twilight."
This is for people who really want to bring back that epic feel, that epic
Yeah,
space opera.
this is how Alta Monopoly is to Monopoly.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. Anyway, thanks for stepping by and helping me talk through it so that I can throw this
Problem.
video out there and people can see it who are interested in TI Noble Edition, and we'll see where it goes. Like I said, a lot of this stuff may change. I'm always in the mood for looking for suggestions or comments or things that people do that is better. My ultimate goal with this project is not for this to be a Philroy project, it's to be a community project. And to that end, I am
I think you're
recruiting
succeeding.
people to help and to help work people who have done cool things, people who have combined and contributed little pieces to this are joining the team so that they can help shepherd their own piece, but also then work with me to help integrate it and cross integrate it. Like you've got all these cool. I'll pick here, for example, on the mercenaries mod that I'm using for my commissars for my hireables. You know, all of these I've got 24 really cool um, commissars. None of these, all of the game mechanics that these commissars are using right now, your base game are your base game mechanics. Referencing base game mechanics because they were designed for adding to just the base game. They were not designed for Noble Edition. Are there any of these things that could be theoretically better adapted to Noble Edition and the mechanics of Noble Edition? For example, we got up this big thing where we've got diplomats running all over Rex City. The extras supposed to be like the super diplomats, yet none of the extra abilities have anything to do with anything that's going on
It's
here
extra.
outside of the agenda stuff over here. Stuff like that.
It gets into like, do we have to start making like nobility specific, you know,
Yeah.
like
Little
faction abilities?
adaptations, and that's where I talk
Yeah.
about integrating things so that it's a more integrated whole. And
Yeah.
I think given the grand scale of this, some of those specialized things like facilities and mercenaries, the actual facilities and mercenaries expansions will probably end up being fancier and more detailed than the version of those things that end up here. Right now, I just kind of pulled them in wholeheartedly. Given the overall complexity of it and what I'm aiming for as a final complexity level, I'm willing to increase it some. We probably will end up using mini versions of some of those expansions here as
Mhm.
opposed to using the full expansion. So if somebody plays this and they're like, "Hey, I really love this facilities thing," they can go, "Oh, hey, look, there's a full version that is just that in greater detail that you could
Ah,
use. If you don't want to mess with everything else that's in nobility, you can. I like the facilities.
yeah.
Okay, well, let me go get the actual just facilities expansion and play with just that." We'll see how it goes.
We will.
All right, my friend.
We
We
will.
tried to carol it up once, and we'll roll it up again. Thanks again for stopping by to help
Yeah.
out, and
No
I'll
problem.
see you around the game table.
Yep.
Take care. Bye bye.